Good evening, all. I welcome you to this extraordinary meeting of the full council, and I'm grateful to Cornell facilitating this meeting and thankful for their support. Please, can we note the notice of the agenda item 1 for filming at meetings? I also want to add that I am aware that we have items on the agenda that our public attendees are really concerned about. I want to make it clear that we are here to listen. During the meeting, we will be following the constitutional rules to ensure fairness and respect for all participants. If any issues arise, I will explain the procedures. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting in public, and it is important that we listen to each other respectfully. Before starting this item, please can the Democratic Services Officer confirm with our sound audio engineer that there are no issues with the streaming of this meeting so far and is available to the public.
I confirm we are live.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Item 2, any apologies for absence? Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, the following councillors have provided apologies for the meeting. Councillor Mason, Councillor Rossetti, Councillor Adjei, Councillor Connor, Councillor Dasnevs, Councillor Mark Blake, Councillor Davis, Councillor Williams and Councillor Diakides.
Thank you. Item 3, admission of late business. Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, I'm asking you to agree the admission of the following late items of business that could not be available earlier and need to be dealt with at this meeting. Item 9, changes to outside bodies and committees. The reason for lateness was due to further information being sought from an outside body on their terms of membership.
Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Please, can members read the notice on declaration of interest and advise the meeting if they have any? Doesn't seem to have any. Item 6, to approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 18th of July 2022. I call on the Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, I would ask the council to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of July 2022.
Thank you. Are they agreed? Thank you very much. Item 6, the Mayor's communication. Colleagues, given the number of agenda items, I will provide an update on my activities in writing after the meeting and forward to all councillors by email. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of southeastern Turkey and Syria after the devastating earthquake, which has killed thousands and will affect many thousands more who are without the basics of food, shelter, and separate from their families. Many of our residents in this borough have connections with the earthquake region, and I have lost families and friends, and I pass all my condolences. I call on the leader of the council who will say some words on behalf of the council, after which we will stand in a minute silent as a mark of respect. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We remember tonight all of the victims of the devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria. The BBC is reporting that more than 33,000 people have lost their lives, and that figure is likely to double. Many of our residents in the borough from Turkey and Syria have families in the area and have been directly affected. I personally know people who have lost many relatives and have been for the last week watching harrowing videos of the devastation and rescue efforts on social media. Our own councillors, among them Councillor Makbule Güneş, Councillor Erdal Doğan, Councillor Emine Ibrahim, Councillor Ajda Bovat, Councillor Marsha Işılar Goslin, and Councillor Michael Katter all have relatives who have been affected. Many of our council officers also have families in the area. We know from our talks with community leaders that there is an immediate need for financial aid. We are urging people to donate money only, and I was joined by Councillor Nessil Chalishgun, the leader of Enfield Council, and the Mayor of Hackney, Philip Glanville, last week, making an appeal for donations. I'd like to thank our MPs, Catherine West and David Lammy, for all their support, and to Ferrier Clark, the MP for Enfield North, who has played a crucial role in Parliament and across North London. And we should also not forget the many of our children and young people in the borough who have been affected and will need our support over the next few weeks. I went to visit my old school, Woodside, and we've written to all head teachers to remind them of the mental health support we have available. As a borough, we will always come together in these difficult times. We look out for our friends and neighbours, but above all, let us remember those in Turkey and Syria who have lost everything and hold them tonight in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7. I turn to the Chief Executive to receive his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is requesting we note the changes to the political composition of the council set out in paragraph 4.3 and agree the resultant change to council committee membership as detailed in paragraphs 4.8 to 4.10.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I call on the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the report and its recommendations.
Thank you. Do we agree the recommendations? Thank you very much. Item 8, to receive a report from the monitoring officer.
Madam Mayor, I have this report.
Thank you very much. Item 9, I call the Chief Whip. Appointment to outside bodies and committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the report and its recommendations.
Is this agreed? Thank you. Item 10, to receive reports from the council bodies. 10A, this is a report from Alexandra Park in Palace or at item 10A. Councillor Ibrahim, please introduce your report.
Thank you, Chair. I move the report and the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No. Is that agreed? Thank you. Yeah. Items 10B. This is a treasury management update. I call, is Councillor Deaghi this here? Or the Vice Chair. May I ask the Vice Chair to present this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the report and its recommendations.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the Vice Chair? No. Are there, can we receive the report? Thank you very much. Item 11, deputations, petitions. For our viewers at home, I will explain that as part of this agenda item, we have 3 petitions to consider, which have each received over 2,200 signatories required to instigate the full council debate. These petitions are objecting to the LTNs in Barnes Green, St. Anne's, West Green, and Bruce Grove area. We also have a deputation of the LTNs and their impact on the cost of living. We have also received a second deputation on tree protection in the borough, and I have also accepted a third deputation from Haringey Accords, do forgive my pronunciation, group, wanted to make representation on the change in approach to management of the leisure centres. In accordance with the committee standing order 37 to allow the good order and dispatch of business, we will consider the presentations of LTNs together. I will ask each petition spokesperson to make their 5-minute representation, and then I will also ask the deputation to also make their representations. We will then have one combined debate with councillors responding to the issues raised by the petitioners and asking questions to the deputation group. At the end of the debate, I will ask the deputy leader of the council to respond and answer in accordance with the petition policy made clear to each petitioner. After the LTN's representation have been responded to, we'll continue to consider the deputation on tree protections, and then the deputation from the acoustic group. Now I call on Caroline Johnson and her petition group to come forward to the table. This petition is objecting to St. Anne's in West Green LTN and reach 4,238 signatures. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caroline. I'm an ordinary working resident of Haringey and I grew up in N15. I wrote the petition to end the St. Anne's Low Traffic Neighbourhood Scheme on behalf of my family and friends who live in and around the LTN and who were suffering a terrible social injustice by the LTN being imposed against the will of residents. I have no political affiliation and certainly not the resources at your command. But just by talking with people, we got well over 4,000 people to sign the petition against the LTN. The council, by contrast, with all its resources, managed only to get just over 1,000 responses with less than 800 people agreeing to the damaged LTN you have introduced. You gave us no option to say no. So today I ask you in the name of the majority to end the LTN now. The LTN has been in force for almost 6 months, by which time you said traffic would evaporate. It has not. It has simply moved to make the lives of so many far worse. The LTNs have of course benefited the council to the tune of almost £2 million in fines in 3 months. The council gave 3 reasons for imposing the LTN. 1, to reduce through traffic. 2, to improve air quality. 3, to help people to walk, cycle and shop locally. On all 3 points, the LTN has failed miserably. I will answer these points. 1, through traffic, now gridlocks, green lanes, West Green roads and all the other so-called boundary roads. Traffic journeys are now slower, longer and so more polluting. Emergency vehicles get stuck. And when a boundary road is blocked or has to be closed, traffic simply piles up with no secondary roads to use for vehicles to get away. 2, the LTN forces traffic onto the now overloaded roads and so increases the pollution and and in the borough generally. Such roads now face greater wear and more repairs, creating more delays and pollution in future. Did the LTN planners not understand that the scheme would make pollution worse? They did, because your own report said it would. How did it help the children at West Green School to have a school street on one side but gridlocked, polluted traffic on another? 3, the L10 is turning St Anne's into a dead zone. The businesses on Avenue Road and the corner shop on Galston Road all now face closure, as trade fell off as soon as the LTN started. But the LTN has also had a negative impact on traders on West Green Roads, St Anne's Road and Green Lanes. Who can bear to walk or cycle along heavy polluted roads to shop or sit in cafes and restaurants? Our thriving community is being strangled by these LTNs. I want to make my own points now. A, your documents made no mention of the cost to those who need to get to work. Local buses now face long rush hour delays, cancellations and curtailments. So the LTN only adds to the stresses on ordinary people's lives. B, the more expensive housing in LTN zone now have quieter streets. But this comes at a cost of the pollution, noise and disturbance to the lives of those wealthy who live on the boundary roads. Our MP, David Lammy, lectured on this topic and called it for what it is in Haringey, environmental racism. The whole LTN idea is based on a lie that traffic has worsened in the borough. It has not, and the Department for Transport admit that since 2001, traffic has fallen across London. Traffic flowed before the LTN because it had the road space. Now it doesn't flow, of all the social ills that brings, like the extra tons per year of CO2 emissions that we must now breathe on the so-called boundary roads. D, there was no mandate for the LTNs. You broke the idea of government by consent when you forced LTNs on us. Look at the response: protests, widespread discontentment, and direct action against cameras. This is what happens: civil disobedience when you are unjust. You showed no care for the wishes of the majority of residents, nor any understanding of the effects that would have on those of us who have to go to work, get children to school, are disabled, have carers, travel by bus, and juggle time to even get to the shops.
You're over your 5 minutes. Have you finished?
I'm nearly finished.
Okay, very quickly, please.
Councillor Hackett has said the LTN is an experiment, but we suffering residents have had enough of being treated like lab rats in this mad LTN scheme. Do not divide us into desirable and non-desirable zones. I thank you for your time. The scheme is on a temporary order. You have the power to end it. So tell us you will do it now. Tear down the barriers, tear down the cameras, free our streets so we can move and breathe.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you very much for the information you have provided us. Thank you. Now I call on Catherine McGrain and her petition group to come forward to the table. This petition objecting to Bounce Green LTN and reach 2,837 signatures. When you are ready, you will have 5 minutes.
Hello? Oh. So today I'm finally speaking on behalf of my community, over 2,800 of whom voiced their opposition to the Bounce Green LTN by signing the petition. With each new LTN you impose on us, you continue to ignore the same concerns: the increase in pollution, the massive increase in traffic on sacrificial roads, the impact on local businesses, and the feedback of the residents who are living in your poorly designed LTNs. With each new LTN you introduce, you create a domino effect, worsening the situation for all your constituents. Councillor Ahmed, you are not doing this with us, you are doing this to us. And what's worse, you know exactly what you're doing. Haringey's own statement of reason for the implementation of the Bounce Green LTN states that it was introduced in 2022 because of the Enfield Bowes LTN, which was introduced 2 years earlier, which led to traffic diverting through Bounce Green to act as the A406. Enfield traffic is not evaporating. Hearing aids traffic is not evaporating. Yet you stick to the script that it will. If not within 6 months or even after 2 years, then when? How many years will you sacrifice residents of boundary roads to increase pollution before you accept that they don't work? While we've seen no sign of the evaporation, we have seen is the negative impact on residents. The last time the council actually heard the residents complain was at the Environment Scrutiny Panel back in the fall. As protesters against the scheme were rallying outside, first-hand accounts of the suffering you have caused to disabled groups and their carers were shared. It highlights that even if you are exempt, you still have to sit in traffic for needless hours, often in terrible pain, and that's even if you can secure transport or, in fact, afford it due to the added cost and the additional mileage for time spent in traffic. Councillor Hakata seems so proud on videos of the huge list of exemptions to the scheme, yet it fails to realize that he is openly admitting that the nightmare it has created. If it worked, you would not need all the exemptions. Never mind how complicated the website to obtain these exemptions is and how misinformed the residents are about them. Then there's the reoccurring reports of exempting residents still receiving PCNs due to system failures, which is creating additional stress for residents in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And we can't ignore the adverse impact the LTN has had on public transport. We now have fewer buses on our roads, taking longer to get anywhere. As per frustrated bus drivers, some routes are taking as much as 3 times longer than before the LTN trial started. We know that TfL met with Arriva and the council to change the target, but massaging the targets is not the answer. Solving the problems you created is the answer. Stop greenwashing the aims and admit that hearing aids LTNs don't work. The only positive that we can see is for the council. Over the past 6 months, over £500,000 in fines have been generated from the Bounds Green LTN trial alone, and that's not even the most profitable LTN in hearing aid. This sounds like a much more likely reason for implementing the scheme. It sounds even more plausible when we see that the funds from these LTN fines have already been budgeted for the next several fiscal years to help support the council. But still, Hearing Aid's social media team is constantly asking for feedback to justify the scheme, no doubt spending vast amount of taxpayer money, but are you actually listening? The original consultation in Bounds Green showed that 65% of residents were against the LTN, yet the trial forged on. It's not surprising when it's been disclosed that Sustrand, a charity which manages the National Cycle Network, was hired for the project. Even the website of their professional arm of the charity is clear in its statement that they are a strong advocate for active travel. This is not an impartial partner when it comes to running a consultation for the LTN. More recently, a manual examination of the commonplace consultation showed that 72% of respondents were unhappy or very unhappy with the LTN. Will this latest consultation actually be listened to, or will it be swept under the rug like the other ones? It appears that at no point have you actually listened to the consultation, objections, feedback, petitions, or in fact the evidence you can see with your own eyes that these schemes are not working. While you keep saying you're listening, none of you seem to comprehend what's being said. The residents want to be heard. They want real answers, not canned responses. We're tired of councillors who are ignoring us, we're not responding to legitimate questions or emails, and hiding behind statements saying they're scared or threatened by the angry protesters, and using this as an excuse to actively engage and follow due process, like listening to this petition and others in a timely manner. I've been to nearly every protest in Hearing Aid about the LTNs, starting back in August and the one at the Corium, where I was meant to present this petition. I stood outside in the cold for hours, pleading with the staff to check the list and let me in and another speaker as we were on the agenda to present. No one from the council came outside to speak to the crowd, a crowd that comprised, amongst others, of children, people in wheelchairs, and religious representatives. Those are the people you're claiming to be afraid of or threatened by. These are not militant protesters. They're everyday people, and they're just asking to be heard by the people who were elected to represent them. Please think of what will be destroyed while you pursue this counterproductive policy against the will of the people. You'll probably lose some seats, and think about all the people who now know your names, have now engaged with local politics in an unprecedented way, and who now understand how you have directly harmed their lives. But also think of the lasting damage doing to the community as a whole. While you spin the betting in lie, in 18 months' time, there won't be on any shops to walk to Middleton Road. The traders have already told you how this has negatively impacted their business. A one-time flyer to less than 10,000 people won't revive the high street that you're destroying. You will have demolished a community that you claim to support.
sorry to interrupt, but your 5 minutes is up. If you just
Yeah, I
finish
have
your sentence.
30 seconds. So already 3 traders have already shut their doors due to the downturn suffered by the implementation, and 60% have seen their income drop by 40% or more. If the trial lasts 18 months, the high street will no longer exist. After 6 months of betting in, it's clear that the LTNs don't work and the trial needs to be ended immediately. The only thing you've achieved so far is united a diverse community by introducing us to each other and uniting us against the LTNs.
Thank you. Thank you,
you.
Catherine. Thank you for the information you have provided us. I call on Emma now, Emma Holland, a petition group to come forward to the table. This petition is objecting to the West Green and Bruce Grove LTN and reached 7,528 signatures. Emma, when you are ready, you have 5 minutes. To be fair, I think 5.5 because everybody ran just a little bit more extra time. Okay.
We are presenting this petition today on behalf of the 7,603 people from Bruce Grove, West Green and the wider Haringey community, as the LTNs are having a huge impact on all our day-to-day lives. You claim these LTNs will reduce pollution and create a safer, cleaner area to live in, but this is not the case, as anyone that has to live, work, drive, cycle, walk or take a bus will know. All our roads are now blocked with traffic 7 days a week, filling our roads and lungs with pollution from idling cars. This has increased, not decreased, as you predicted. Roads are now unsafe even for cyclists who are opting to use the pavements instead of the roads, putting pedestrians at risk. Our roads are narrow, unlike other boroughs or cities, and just can't handle the increased volume of traffic alongside buses and emergency services. Another example of this is when we have events at Tottenham Stadium, or there has been an incident where roads have been closed. All roads have become gridlocked with no escape for road users, and access for emergency vehicles has become hindered. This is detrimental to the whole community and puts our lives at risk. This leads me to the increase in pollution on our roads, especially the boundary roads where traffic has now been forced. This is hazardous to not only the residents, but also schools, cyclists, businesses and pedestrians that use them. Do these people not matter to you? Well, they do to us, and Ella's law also states clean air for all. We and our children should not be used as laboratory animals, putting our lives in danger for a trial experiment. The same goes for our local businesses that are vital for the community. They've managed to survive COVID, but are now being put on trial again by you. Many are not going to survive, and many have already had to close due to 20 to 80% drop in trade since the LTs were implemented. Tradespeople with heavy equipment are struggling to make a living due to lost time stuck in traffic and difficulties accessing properties and local trade shops, all adding to extra costs in fuel and time. So they are now choosing not to take the jobs or are increasing their rates. Taxis, food and medical deliveries are also doing this, which are vital to the people in our community who rely on these services, especially those disabled or suffering from anxiety or mental health issues. They are now isolated and unable to live a healthy life. Not everyone has a dedicated driver. Some people have no one. They are also unable to get to health appointments or return home. At times, vulnerable people, including children, have been left stranded on the wrong side of the filters, making them feel degraded. Therapists, midwives and all other medical staff who are vital to our community have a daily list of patients they are booked to see across this borough and the next, but now might only be able to get to half the amount of people due to the LTN traffic and filters, increasing NHS waiting times when all services are already under extreme pressures and delays. Exemptions might sound great, but you have made it so complicated that not all that need them will be able to get them. And for those that do, the reality is they don't actually help, as all the other roads are full of traffic. Therefore, healthcare workers, parents of children with complex needs, disabled in excruciating pain and people suffering anxiety are still stuck in traffic, sometimes for hours. This is not okay. Some may have already died due to the LTNs, and with the emergency services being delayed, sadly more will die if we allow this trial to continue. Carers and families of vulnerable, elderly and disabled are now not able to get to their loved ones to care for them or visit them regularly without sitting in excessive traffic, which is having a massive knock-on effect to not only the vulnerable, but also the carers' lives and jobs. In fact, LTNs are having a huge negative effect on everyone's mental health at an already stressful time, and the cost of living crisis causing an increase in suicidal thoughts, self-harm, domestic violence, child abuse, neglect and anxiety within the community. Many people are also now apprehensive about leaving their homes, which is isolating many, especially women, for fear of attacks or antisocial behaviour. Teenagers are going through some of the hardest years of their lives, full of change, exams, fear of drugs, gangs, knives and their future. Do they need more invisible lines with gang lines and county lines? The answer is no. Parents have already lost their jobs due to not being able to do school runs and get to work, and many more will have the same fate. You are pushing working families into poverty. So we want the LTNs to be removed now, as we really feel Haringey is failing in the safeguarding of some of the most deprived areas in the borough. Why you would even bring LTNs into such areas is very questionable, as many feel they never had an issue with traffic before LTNs, but now everyone is affected by LTNs, be it physically, emotionally or financially. The community is slowly being destroyed by them. The daily stress and financial strain is unbearable at a time when people are already struggling with the cost of living. End Haringey's LTNs now. We have been saying this constantly and feel you have not been listening or communicating to the community individually or as a whole throughout the entire LTN process. For example, not allowing the public into council meetings on more than one occasion. You are our council and you should be representing the people that voted for you. This is not a dictatorship. So please listen to the community and the 7,603 respondents to this petition. We do not agree with the LTN implementation and we want them removed now.
Thank you very much. You're exactly on the right time as well. Thank you, Emma. I call on Samuel Davison, who has put a deputation forward on LTN's effect on the cost of living for the local community. Samuel, when you are ready, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Leader of the Council, Cabinet members and councillors. I thank you for allowing me this important opportunity to give my deputation this evening. As you know, my name is Shmuel Davidson. I've been a voice to my community in South Tottenham for over 25 years now. The council knows me well and knows that my best interest is of the residents at the heart, as is of the council. I cannot recall such an upset caused in the local community, as rightly so. The LTN closures have caused great upset for several reasons. In fact, it is causing disruption and danger to roads outside of the borough boundaries too. Take, for example, a very busy junction, Stamford Hill, Amherst Park. Just a few months ago, during rush hour, there was a terrible accident where 2 teenage girls were critically injured. The fact is that since the LTN has come into effect, the traffic backs all the way up and causes a gridlock like never seen before. With many hundreds of children coming home from school during this time, it is simply dangerous. I'm talking about today is regarding the LTN between St Anne's and West Green Road. This has a huge detrimental effect on the Orthodox Jewish community. Let me explain. Everyone knows that we are now in a cost of living crisis. I'm sure the council is aware of that. The community I represent, with larger than average family size and kosher food being extra expensive to start off with, and now with the rising even further, the effect on the poorest of our community is almost too much to bear. A non-for-profit shop, which is widely known as the Cost Shop, has opened on West Green Road a couple of years ago and is extremely popular in the Orthodox Jewish community. It is literally a lifeline for so many in the community and their families, especially when it comes to taking a decision between food or having heating. It is primarily used by large families for their regular food shopping. Due to the amount of shopping that a family is required, the vehicle access is required. The road closures have made this trip unbearable and in many cases impossible, which in turn, many children are going hungry. Yes, councillors, hungry. The traffic, the extra journey time, disappropriate measures and directly leads to extra traffic in many situations impossible to get to, and of which many families rely on, as well as the goodwill from volunteers to take them and help them with a car. More pollution inappropriately adds to the hardship already experienced by so many. We would like this to be considered, to calculate again, to make the right decision. Yes, you heard, councillors, the right decision, and remove and amend the unpopular scheme, if not anything, just to relieve the hardship on so many local families, to allow them that little bit of food which they can afford. And if this won't be the case, how would the council think and propose amicable resolutions to keep these families a vital lifeline going to help feed so many in this very difficult times? I appreciate the time this evening, and I thank you all for listening, those who have listened and taken note. And I thank the council for allowing me this opportunity to say my deputation this evening. And may I end off with a Hebrew saying, Oseh shalom b'maimov, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol v'imru amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the information you have provided for us. Now we will start the debate in response to the petitions and end up with any questions for the deputation. Now, I have a list of the names of the councillors who want to speak up. Councillor Bartlett first. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much to all the deputations who've come to speak tonight, who've given up their time, and also to kind of express regrets that we weren't able to do that at the last council meeting. I think I speak for all councillors when, I think I speak for all councillors when I say that we had very much hoped to hold the full council meeting last time, and that we didn't want to delay having this important discussion. And I think the point that I wanted to make, I represent West Green Ward, so it's particularly about that LTN, although I think it applies across the board, is that it has been something that has generated obviously lots of interest, lots of opposition, which we've heard tonight, but also lots of people getting in touch because they support it. I was elected in May, and it is the issue that I have received the most correspondence about. And I think what's been really interesting to hear is about how the changes have affected people. Now, what we've heard from tonight is people in opposition, but we haven't in this debate heard so much about the positive. And I think what's really vital, and what I hope the cabinet member will talk through, is where we are on some of the evidence base for this. The reason that this is an experiment is that we don't initially know the effects of some of these decisions. Now, personally, I would have liked to have seen a London-wide scheme be introduced, or something on a bigger scale, because I personally think that that's a more effective way of doing these kind of schemes. But because of the way that the government obviously introduced it, this is not possible, and has led to councils having to do their own scheme bit by bit. And we all know that some of these schemes lead to kind of unintended consequences. We all have roads within our wards that suddenly became busy at quite bizarre times, and we weren't sure what was going on. I'm particularly concerned about Belmont Road in West Green Ward, which was never particularly busy. And from talking to the council and the officers and the cabinet member, that is a road that is having a particular focus on it in terms of the cameras and other things that are measuring how it's working. So I would say personally that I think the way that we go forward as a council that has stated a resolution to reduce air pollution and has committed to do something pretty radical, and that means change for all of us. I have personally, as you can probably tell from my physique, not the most athletic person. I had to go and get my bike on several occasions because I thought I'm not driving. And actually that's part of it. It is part of change, is not always the easiest thing. But I think, and I hope, what we will hear from Councillor Carter tonight is a commitment to continue looking at what works and what doesn't, and a commitment to continue listening and talking with people, so that what we come out with at the end of this period works the best it can for the majority of people. Because although we've heard from people who are very much anti, and some of the people who are very pro are also motivated to get in touch, oftentimes when you're a councillor, it's the people who are somewhere in the middle who don't always get represented. Thank you.
Perhaps, as you have said at the beginning, try to keep it around 3 minutes each, please. Councillor Emery.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah. I thought I was looking that way.
Yes, in this case it is me. Apologies. Yes, I just like to comment briefly on this topic on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group. The implementations of LTNs in Haringey has clearly left a lot to be desired. In particular, consultation with businesses and disability groups has clearly been insufficient, resulting in the excessively burdensome individual circumstance exemption, which I hope the Cabinet will look at again. Signage has clearly also been poor in many places, which is why we've ended up with the millions of pounds of fines. Senior Labour councillors and officers often make the point that Haringey is compliant with providing the legal minimum of signage, but it's clear from the number of people being fined that the legal minimum is not enough. The council has always maintained it is not a money-making venture, so it needs to stick by this. The council should use its unexpected windfall to provide better signs and to paint markings on roads which do not have a modal filter. However, while the Liberal Democrats are certainly critical of the way the council has gone about introducing them, we are supportive of these trials continuing. There are exemptions, but in general, evidence from other LTNs shows that traffic is reduced rather than displaced, and we are supportive of Haringey's efforts to reduce traffic, leading to better air quality, less congestion, and fewer traffic collisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Argell.
It is my go now. Okay, didn't mean to steal thunder there. First of all, I want to thank all of the residents who have taken their time in Bounds Green to sign the petition, and also for the deputation here this evening. It's really important that local people make their voices heard, and we are here to listen here tonight at the full council meeting. I'm going to focus on the LTN in Bounds Green because that's where I represent, and there are some really specific issues I want to mention. So the low traffic neighbourhood in Bounds Green is really unique because it was introduced to complete the LTN in Enfield, which was implemented during the pandemic, and was introduced to deal with some of the displaced traffic from that borough into Haringey. It's also unique because Bounds Green is a unique community, and it's because of that reason that we have to get the introduction and the implementation of the LTN right for residents living there and for traders working there. So since the introduction of the LTN on the 15th of August, I have responded to every single piece of correspondence from residents in Bounds Green about the LTNs and other issues, just to clarify that matter. But the LTN has been welcomed by some residents. Some have said that it has changed their lives. They feel safer in their community as a whole, but also cycling and walking on their roads. Some residents have contacted me to say that the quality of their lives has improved, as the reduction of traffic on their road has been mirrored by a reduction in antisocial behaviour, including less littering and noise, and they don't have huge lorries cutting through residential streets routinely, which used to happen every morning, waking them up at 5 o'clock. Some residents who were initially against the LTN have also contacted me to say that they are now supportive of it, seeing it in practice and the benefits that is already starting to deliver to them. However, I've heard from residents and traders who are very deeply unhappy with the introduction of the LTN because of the displacement of traffic that would have used residential streets as cut-throughs onto the boundary roads and increased their travel times getting around to and from schools in their local community. I've heard from a resident who cares for her partner, who has had a number of health conditions and is concerned about a potential increase in ambulance response times in the event of an emergency. And some residents are concerned about the potential increase in the level of pollution from idling traffic on boundary roads, and in particular the Durnsford Road, as cars travel down, often in gridlock, during peak travel times towards the tube station onto the Brownlow Road. There has also been an impact for traders on Middleton Road who've reported a reduction in footfall, customers and their income following the introduction of the LTN. We will continue to listen to residents about how the LTN can be improved, because that is where the solutions are and where the best ones will be when we listen to them. We have already done this right at the beginning of when the LTN was introduced, and residents raised concerns about signage, which has now been improved. But there are more tweaks to support local businesses and residents, which will help improve their quality of life and hopefully switch to them supporting the LTN. Some of these include, firstly, we want to see more bike hangers. We welcome the introduction of some of these in the new sites in Buckingham Road and Manor Road, but there needs to be more type of this infrastructure to support active travel in Bounds Green. Secondly, my co-councillor Mary Mason and I have met with the Middleton Road Strategy Group and traders and business owners on the road to support for the road, and we want to see the regeneration of this conservation area to include.
Councillor, your time is up. Can you
Okay.
finish?
Okay, so very quickly, we want to see some permanent parklets for businesses to use the local environment for the maximum impact of their business, repavement of the road to bring it up to standard to comparable high streets, the introduction of loading bays and permits to ensure businesses can receive deliveries, and the support of promotion of local businesses to the local community living by. Other tweaks include discretionary passes for residents and how we can ensure the public transport infrastructure can be improved so buses are used and be used.
Thank you,
more smoothly.
Councillor. Thank you very much. I'll call on Councillor James.
Okay, so my name is.
Sorry, I can't see who's speaking.
My name is Sue Jameson and I became ward councillor for Bruce Castle Ward in May 2022. As such, I've opted to talk at this full council meeting on the highly divisive subject of the LTNs. As councillors, we've been talking to our ward residents and saw the disruption caused by the LTNs when they were first implemented. We heard how some were angered by the existence of LTNs, while others are grateful and inspired. Most seem to be in the middle, where they accept that poor air quality needs action and they see the LTNs as a necessary, legitimate experiment. Tottenham is a densely populated area and has seen many recent changes in housing developments. New house builds have very limited parking capacity. Cycle infrastructure has been introduced and improved. There are various vehicle schemes such as zip cars and hire bikes. Adjoining boroughs have similar cycle and car schemes, as well as public transport to enable seamless travel. Data is being collected and analysed as the LTN experiment continues. Council officers use automatic traffic counters, ATCs, to monitor the type and speed of traffic. As councillors, we've heard from residents both positive and negative. Where problems arise, we are visiting the identifying streets and can request automatic traffic counters to help us monitor unforeseen traffic issues or ask for other traffic calming measures. For me, Winbourne Road is an example of this, and I'm now waiting for the data. We hope we can continue to engage with residents to find out what's happening and to help where we can. To date, most road planning has been designed with motor vehicles in mind. But buses and walking, for those that can, are the fairest and most democratic form of transport. Sometimes cars have come to dominate and intimidate. Bus and cycle lanes have been introduced to try and improve things, but this is usually done as an afterthought. I know change can be very challenging because habits can become ingrained. Therefore, it's great to learn about more sustainable forms of transport when young. I see many more families cycling these days. Children can't drive, and walking and cycling help them learn independence, road safety, and gain a sense of direction and belonging in their communities. They need safe streets and deserve clean air to do this. I know these are challenging times for many businesses. Some companies have foreseen LTNs and are now delivering using electric bikes with containers attached. There are those who need to use motor vehicles due to work reasons or mobility issues, and if we have fewer cars, there will be enough road space for those people who really need to drive. Any monies made from the LTN fines goes into the Freedom Pass scheme that provides subsidised travel for those over 60 or with disability. In conclusion, I would like to see this experiment through because I believe the right to play, walk, scoot, cycle safely and improve air quality is more important than the right of polluting motor vehicles to be driven through every street. But above all, I would like to hear from all our residents so that we can engage constructively in evidence-based discussion.
Thank you, Councillor. I call on Councillor Hymans now. Thank you.
Thank you to all those who've contributed to the debate this evening, and I'm so pleased that we have finally enabled our speakers to share their views tonight. I wanted to tell you about why I first decided I needed to fight for change. 10 years ago, I camped outside a coal-fired power station in Didcot, along with hundreds of other climate campaigners, because we knew that if we kept burning fossil fuels, we would grow up into a world of ecological catastrophe. From floods in Pakistan to wildfires in Whipps Cross, climate breakdown has accelerated at a speed I couldn't have imagined back then. And yet I look at those politicians in Westminster whose inaction has let oil giants like BP and Shell make tens of billions in profits and has forced the rest of us to breathe toxic air. Between 2017 and 2019 alone, poor air quality caused over 1,700 admissions to hospital for serious asthma and lung conditions, many of them children who, like me, are living with the lifelong consequences of breathing toxic air. How can I stand here and tell the young people in Haringey who are campaigning for a fairer and greener future that I was elected and I did nothing? Ahead of this debate, I reached out to residents and asked what they thought of the changes in our streets. I've heard concerns from those caring for vulnerable people, feeling it was another inconvenience after a decade of brutal class war austerity. I heard from small businesses struggling with rising energy costs. And I heard from nurses underpaid and overworked and now frustrated at increased commuting times. But I also heard genuine support from the scheme. I heard from disabled people and those with mobility issues, from people of every background, and from those with very young children who do not want to see them grow up breathing toxic air. So it's my job to listen, to push for amendments, improve our exemptions, and secure targeted support for those in need where I can. But we mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture. Road traffic remains the largest source of emissions in Haringey. Time is running out for our planet, and bold action is long overdue. So whether you love the filters or you hate them, remain on the fence. Let's not forget the real issues at hand. Fossil fuel capitalism is destroying our environment and damaging our health, all in the name of profits for a privileged few. So I am determined to do what I can to reduce emissions and create a city that genuinely works for the many. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I call on Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Councillor Ibrahim Ali. I'm also newly elected councillor for Bruce Castle Ward. And I want to actually start by thanking the people for taking the time to come out today. I think it's a really important, healthy aspect of our democracy that people come and say very difficult things, despite people disagreeing, hopefully respectfully. I do think that's really important. So from my perspective, please don't see it as in vain. I think it's genuinely quite useful, and it's actually given me a lot of food for thought and something for me to take away to lobby the lead member. I think we have to think about the context in which we're delivering these schemes. I think Haringey has been an outlier for a very long time in terms of really trying to work around how do we get around getting people active, getting people out of their cars who don't need to be in their cars, people like me. And I think it's about having that cultural change. And I think change is quite difficult. It's not easy to actually do something quite radical, and every council accept that an LTN is a radical scheme to do. But what we do need to do is actually to find the best way of implementing it and making it work. Because ultimately, climate change affects all of us, and it doesn't discriminate. And in Haringey, we know at least 60% of our cars, 60% of our residents rather, do not have access to cars. And that figure goes far higher in wards like mine. So when it comes to people who don't have access, I have to think about them because they're also breathing in that toxic air, without actually wanting it. But no one consulted them. No one asked them. No one gave them a petition or a recall to say, well, can I have that, inhale those fumes on the high road? So I think we've got to think about those people and be a voice for them. We also know that air pollution tends to affect tends to be higher in low-income areas, and that they are likely to drive. So when it comes to the Bruce Castle Bounds Green LTN, albeit our ward has a very tiny bit of it, the vast majority of it in West Green and Tottenham Central, we have to be honest and say we did have a perfect storm in the first 2 weeks. We had major resurfacing electrical works on Lordship Lane. We had utility works on Lansdowne Road and the High Road. We had a major incident in 4th Street and Westbury Avenue, including localised flooding. So the lead member knows my thoughts about how the scheme went in the first week. But I hope to be confident during the rest of the trial period, we actually need to understand and get a good feel for how these schemes actually work in the long term. And if there are parts that need to be tweaked, addressed, changed, scrapped maybe, we need to do that. And I want to actually mention a few particular parts of my ward, if that's okay. The first concern that I do have is actually Bruce Grove, the road Bruce Grove A10. There are concerns about the journey times, about getting from Bruce Castle to the town centre. And one of the things I'd like to see the lead member respond is what conversations has he had with TfL to introduce a bus lane, whether it be a temporary bus lane, a timed bus lane, to make sure those buses can get in and out of Bruce Grove as quickly as possible. I am also concerned at the same time about the number of cars we are still seeing coming off the Great Cambridge Road, which is also in my ward, the A10, and which is having impacts further down in West Green Road, heading onto Belmont Road and the Roundway. So we do need to be honest, there is still a challenge. There are hundreds of thousands of cars coming into the borough every single day from Hertfordshire, from Essex, from Enfield, who do not use the borough. They use the borough to get through to the borough. So what we need to is try to encourage them to stay off the borough roads, stick onto the A406, and to relieve the roads of those who do need them. And finally, I have to say, on balance, the vast majority of the residents who've written to me, and I say the residents of Bruce Castle, have been supportive. I've had a lot of people to say that they've had a really good experience, people who are sceptical, people who thought that it would really flood their road of all kinds of congestion, have actually changed their mind as a period of time. So I do need to give people a period of time to change their mind, to see how it works, to see how it settles. But I'm definitely under no illusion that there are genuine junctions, there are particular roads that need to be addressed, in particular Tottenham High Road, going southbound, and in particular Bruce Grove A10. And finally, I think it's really important that we have an evidence-based approach. I think some of the things we've heard tonight, I have to say, have to be based in fact. We cannot make policy based on opinion or based on conjecture. These ideas of people dying because of LTNs. I think it's really we have to be very careful what we're saying. Journey times are being affected. We need to have the data. So we need to have the lead member come back with the data from TfL, from the council, from all the monitoring that's happened. We need to be very, very careful what we're saying is based in evidence, because as a councillor, I can't go along with something that hasn't any evidential basis. So I really would urge the lead member to have an evidential basis for the consultation period that's being carried out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I call on Carly Harrison, Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Rossetti wanted to speak to this debate, but was unexpectedly unable to attend this evening. So I'm just going to say what she wanted to say, if that's okay with everyone. So I'd just like to comment briefly on the LTN on behalf of the residents I represent in Alexandra Park Ward. This is called the Bounds Green LTN, but also covers areas of Alexandra Park. The area has had problems with speeding traffic using local roads for a long time. The response I've had from residents has been very mixed, with some supportive and some very against. It is important the council keeps collecting data so that we can understand conclusively whether traffic is being reduced or displaced. I think this trial is worthwhile, but we need more data before we can say conclusively whether it is a success or not.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke tonight, especially the councillors who it was their maiden speech. And I hope I'm not making a mistake here. This is Councillor Butler, Councillor Argel, Councillor Jameson, and Councillor Hymas. I understand it was your maiden speech. Well done. Congratulations. Councillor Ali, I wasn't sure if it was your first maiden speech or not. You can correct me.
Unfortunately, it was.
It was. Well done, then congratulations to everyone who spoke. Now, are there any questions for the deputation? I said at the beginning, I'll take questions for the deputations. Please indicate if you have any. It doesn't seem we have any. Okay, thank you very much. Now I will call on the Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for Climate Action, Environment and Transport to respond to the petitions. Councillor Haga, you got 10 minutes, yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will try my hardest to not take up that full 10 minutes. And thank you to the petitioners and the deputations for coming out in this cold night to share your views, and to my colleagues in this room for their very insightful and observant speeches about these schemes. All of the councillors in this room live in the borough. Many have families in the borough, children who go to Haringey schools, elderly parents, loved ones with disabilities. They are all living through the same experience as everyone else. There aren't two different types of residents. Councillors are residents too. And most of the councillors in this room drive. All of us use cars some of the time. So we know that this is a major change to how most people get around, and we want to make this work as much as you. If you build for cars, you get cars, and you choose to take journeys by car. We have a basic problem in major cities, and especially London, which is classed as the most congested city in the world, with drivers sitting on average per year 148 hours in traffic. All of us use cars some of the time, so we know that there's a major problem and we need to address it. Build safe spaces for active, sustainable travel, and make our roads safe for everyone and all users, and those most excluded from active travel are incentivised to be more active. We're doing this because LTNs and traffic management schemes like them actually do reduce congestion in the long run. The only way to actually cut congestion is to have mixed travel, sometimes car, sometimes by bus, train, foot or bike. And we need to build our environments and our neighbourhoods so they are for all of those modes. The largest study on LTNs in London, published earlier this year, shows that traffic is reduced by 47% inside LTNs, and it also showed that there was no increase in traffic on boundary roads on the whole. Right now, I know that on some roads, at some times, that can seem hard to believe. But where LTNs have been introduced in other boroughs, traffic falls over time as people get used to the changes and travel in different ways. And we must remember, as was said earlier, that 60% to 70% of Haringey residents do not own a car. They do not have access to a car. And yet our roads have been heavily filled with traffic for years and years. Most of that traffic is coming through our borough. It's not stopping, it's not visiting, it's passing through. And we've got to ensure that our air is clean for the residents and our roads are safe for the residents that live here and the residents that mainly use walking as their means. We designed the LTNs around the needs of people with disabilities, and Haringey was put in one of the most comprehensive sets of exemptions anywhere. But we are still working to improve that wherever we can and working with disability groups to improve that as we go. We designed them with the emergency services too. And I think this has to be absolutely repeated, is that we worked regularly with the emergency services and continue to have dialogue with the emergency services. And they assure us that there have been no incidents where their blue light service have been impacted. We will keep looking at where we need to make exemptions where they are needed, but the key things we need to do is cut congestion, cut pollution and improve safety. And we can't do this if the roads are built for people to drive everywhere and nothing else. I don't agree with the assertion that the people of Haringey reject the LTNs. I know there are very strong feelings on both sides of this debate. And me and my colleagues here have had thousands of people write or phone us or speak to us and approach us talking about how they also support the LTNs. And we hope and we expect, so we expect to see, if these schemes are working, we expect to see the conditions improve.
I'd like to, please, we should all respect each other. Like we heard you, now we need to hear the cabinet member. Thank you. Carry on.
Okay. The LTNs are just part of what we need to do to cut pollution, cut congestion and improve road safety. We are doing things to make it easier to travel differently. We're improving and expanding pavements to make it easier to walk around. We're introducing an affordable bike scheme, one of the only London boroughs to do this, to make it cheaper to buy a bike. And in the long term, less congested roads will cut bus journey times too. We are installing 400 electric vehicle charging points by 2026 in response to the claims that the council did not consult effectively on the West Green Bruce Grove LTN trials. I'd like to set out some facts. A consultation leaflet was sent to every address in the LTN area and boundary roads. It was also available in libraries and available on request in 4 commonly spoken languages other than English. A survey with free post return was sent to every address and could also be completed online. Delivery of all documents were verified using digital tracking, and where delivery issues were identified, these were remedied. We held street exhibitions, pop-ups, stalls outside schools. 25 lamppost wraps and 100 posters were placed across the LTN area. This is a lot of engagement, and considering that we tracked all of the communications to people's homes, I'm not sure it's fair to say that residents did not receive the information or the consultation packs. As I mentioned earlier, all of our LTNs have been introduced on an experimental basis. There is a very specific timeline and time frame for the LTNs, 18 months in total. We will look and are looking in this process right now and continuing to looking at the data, looking at the feedback, and where we need to make changes early on, we will make those changes. But we need to allow these schemes to also settle, allow the behaviour change to kick in where we see less drivers entering the borough just to pass through. Once the full period is over, we will assess the data we've collected. Finally, we will include all the feedback from residents and we will make a decision on the future of the LTNs. At this stage, I cannot make a commitment to any other course of action. In response to petition 1, if there is for that reason, for the reasons I've set out, I cannot agree with the action proposed, which was to end the LTNs now. In response to petition 2, I can't agree with the action proposed, which is to end the LTN now. And in petition 3, based on what I've just said, I can't agree with the proposed action, which is to end the LTN now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In accordance with the petition rules, are councillors in agreement to the responses provided by the cabinet member? Is that agreed? Thank you. Now I call on John Sees to make a representation of the increasing production for trees in the borough. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. If you're staying, please don't shout, or thank you for coming. Good night. Apologies for that. When you're ready. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Hello, and thank you for listening to the deputation tonight. Haringey Council has recently published its draft tree and woods plan, which despite having declared a climate emergency in 2019, has not been updated since 2008. In the draft plan, there is no significant action plan for the protection of mature trees in the borough. Trees are a vital community asset in fighting climate heating, biodiversity collapse, flooding and pollution. Mature trees are essential biodiversity links in vital corridors that link different areas of Haringey's urban forest. At the heart of every council decision needs to be a comprehensive understanding of the climate crisis we are now in. Lord Debden, chair of the government's Committee on Climate Change, told the BBC that we need to put into the planning laws that every decision has to be made with climate change and sustainability in mind. It will take 30 years for saplings to reach maturity, yet it is the next 5 years which are absolutely crucial in reducing our carbon emissions and increasing biodiversity. We are fast approaching tipping points that once crossed, we may never recover from. Haringey Council states that it intends to protect mature trees from planners and insurers, but we need actual policy that protects our existing urban forest. Haringey recently approved planning at St Anne's, one of the most tree depleted wards in the borough, where contractors are right now destroying what will be nearly half of the existing mature canopy of this unique site. Instead, it will create parking spaces for 167 cars in one of London's most polluted areas. The arboriculturalist Russell Miller states about St Anne's that this site is remarkable. This site is an arboretum. The tree expert Paul Wood has said that the trees of St Anne's are the heaven-sent opportunity to provide place for the people who live here in the future. Instead of incorporating and preserving the existing historic planting at this site into the new building design, many of these trees are being lost. Planners need to work with existing mature planting to be granted planning permission. Bristol's local plan states that all new development should integrate existing important trees. How will the council achieve its target of 30% canopy cover in each ward unless there is a real focus on embedding protective tree policy in its highways, planning, housing and finance departments, as well as the integration of climate emergency decision-making across all departments? Our increasingly hot and dry summers means that there will be more subsidence claims, and insurers often shift blame from poor building foundations that need underpinning onto mature trees. Haringey should, like Islington, Camden and Barnet, sign up to the Joint Mitigation Protocol, which, as well as the Financial Ombudsman's Department, calls for a substantial period of seasonal monitoring after pollarding to see whether that specific tree is a direct cause of subsidence or not. If a public tree is marked for felling because of subsidence, the local community who benefits from that tree needs to be shown the evidence that the tree is a direct cause of subsidence and there is no alternative but felling. The campaign group Stop Home Insurers Felling Trees states that a mature oak does the work of around 150 saplings in terms of carbon sequestration. For the tree losses that are absolutely unavoidable, we need a comprehensive mitigation planting system that replaces lost carbon absorption right now and not in 30 years' time when it may be too late. So we urgently call for revisions to Haringey's Tree and Woodland Plan to create stronger, more detailed protections for mature trees that are legally binding and have solid, measurable outcomes. We call for transparency on data for public trees in subsidence claims and a comprehensive monitoring system to prove that they are the direct and primary cause of subsidence and that all other engineering alternatives are fully considered before felling. We call for a change in building planning where all existing mature tree stock is incorporated into planning applications. We urge Haringey to establish its tree forum as soon as possible to enable residents to contribute to how the council manages and monitors trees. And we call for a proper carbon and biodiversity.
Minutes are up.
I'll just nearly there. Last point. We call for a proper carbon and biodiversity mitigation with new planting for the loss to the community of public trees where there is absolutely no choice but to fell them. We must plant for the future, but our climate is drastically changing and the ecological systems that we all depend on are collapsing. The most effective way of protecting future generations is to do everything that we can to preserve the existing urban forest that we have right now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will take questions.
Okay.
I have two councillors which indicate they want to ask a question. The first one, excuse me, I have a bit of a funny throat. Councillor Caldwell, are you here? I can't see you. Please ask your question. Yes, 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 yeah. Yes, please, you have a question.
He's not ready.
Oh, I see you're not ready. Sorry, I didn't understand. Councillor Carlin, then, are you ready? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for coming and bringing your deputation tonight. I do completely agree with you that we need to protect our mature trees wherever we can. And our new local plan will actually have greatly enhanced protections for our new trees. But I would like to ask you this question. Haringey is a deeply unequal borough. Life expectancy drops 8 years from the west of the borough to the east. And in terms of tree cover, that inequality is replicated. Hornsey and Wood Green, the constituency, has amongst the highest levels of tree cover in the country. But Tottenham has amongst the lowest. We know how important trees are, not just for the ecological benefits, but also for mental health. Being around trees reduces cortisol, reduces stress, improves levels of depression. It works on quite a micro level. So we know how important that is. Given the above,
Councillor Carley, can you ask your question, please?
Given the above, do you agree that we need to prioritise increasing tree cover to those areas that have few trees and not further embed inequalities in Haringey? Thank you.
Shall I answer that question now? Yeah. So I live on West Green Road. I'm a resident of South Tottenham, and I quite agree that there are inequalities. And yes, we do need to increase the number of trees in the areas that have less tree canopy. But unless we actually protect the mature trees that we have, whatever trees that we plant are undermined by those losses. If one mature tree equals 150 trees, if you plant 150 trees in one of the areas with less tree cover and cut 4 trees in that area, the numbers aren't adding up. So I would fully support tree planting throughout Haringey and definitely increase the canopy where there is not enough canopy at the moment. But what we're arguing for is the fact that everything has to be done to protect the mature trees that we have, because if you cut those down, if you plant 2,000 trees and cut 13, you haven't gone ahead in terms of carbon sequestration. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Thank you. Thanks for the deputation. I agree with a lot of what's been said about how important trees are in the fight against the climate crisis and how important it is to protect mature trees as well as planting new ones and increasing our canopy cover. I just wanted to pick up on two of the points that were made in the deputation. So on the St Anne's development, you know, I'm a long-time environmentalist. I'm a young person worried about what my future on this planet will be like. And I'm also the Stroud Green Ward councillor, where the environment and trees are a very big issue. So this is very important to me. But when kind of balancing the competing needs of residents, sometimes the choices you have to make are not simple. And as a member of the planning committee, I supported the decision to approve the St Anne's housing development. It didn't feel great.
Councillor, can you please ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask you a question. It didn't feel great to vote for something that would result in trees being lost, but the development will deliver nearly 600 desperately needed affordable homes, high energy efficiency, low carbon. And on the subsidence claims, I think the deputation members will know that it is really the insurance companies that have most of the power in these situations. And what ultimately needs to happen is a change in the law from national government and a directive from the insurance regulator for companies to change course and stop forcing local authorities to cut down trees. So what further action do the Haringey Tree Protectors think that we should take
I'm
together?
sorry, Councillor, but I think when we say questions, we mean questions. It's not a debate.
I'm literally just asking the question.
Could you quickly
Yeah,
ask your
yeah.
question?
I'd like to ask the Haringey Tree Protectors what further action they think we should take together to push for national legislation and changes to insurance practices to better enable people and their local authorities to preserve mature street trees.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the subsidence claims and the community, I think it's absolutely imperative that where there is a subsidence claim, the council needs to be transparent with the community about the data on that claim, because it is the public's tree. You safeguard the trees in Haringey on our behalf, and we pay you to do that. So we have a right to know if a tree is due to be felled because of subsidence. We need to be shown the evidence that that is the case, and that is the only alternative is to fell that tree. And I think that would help alleviate the frustration. Until that happens, people will fight to protect their trees. If they think there isn't a case for it to be felled, people will fight to protect it because it's very important to local people. So could you just remind me quickly on the St Anne's question?
That was just
It's
more of
about
a point about kind of balancing
Yes.
the needs of.
We understand it's difficult, and we need housing. If I understand correctly, there will be affordable housing, but Haringey Council, if there's going to be actual social housing, Haringey Council has to buy those homes back. And that's why we're also calling for, if planners and architects know that in Haringey, they have to work with the existing tree stock of important trees in the borough. They know they have to work around that. So whatever plan they come up with has to work with the existing mature trees. If they know that ahead of time, they can work with that. And then we're not always trying to fight for this tree or that tree not to be lost. And that's the same with insurers as well. If insurance companies know that in Haringey, there's a robust monitoring process in subsidence claims, they won't, they will just, it'll be easier for Haringey, I think, to deal with subsidence problems in the community.
Can I add one thing
Please,
more about subsidence?
Thank you very much.
Can I add one more thing?
Sorry, who is?
Just about subsidence, can I add one more thing? It was
Oh,
just
the
the
deputation.
question was raised.
From my deputation and my supporter.
Yes.
Okay.
One
go
more
on.
issue is just you raised the question about how to change the law in this matter, and I do think if you as a council were able to work with other councils, because obviously other councils are also up against this with the power of insurers, is there not where you can cooperate and take on insurers in that way and think about drafting a legislation as a collectivity of London councils? Is that something that's not feasible?
Thank you.
Thank you. And that presentation, which I can assure you in the spirit, I agree with absolutely everything I'm saying. I do take issue with some of the details. I'm not going to take very long on this, but obviously, you know, we can all agree on the incredible ecosystem benefits of trees and social and health benefits. As an administration, we're determined to take huge steps to reduce with an ambitious and transformational programme which will make our borough one of the greenest in the capital. We have a manifesto commitment to achieving 30% tree coverage in every neighbourhood to deal with that disparity that was talked about earlier. And part of the commitment will be fulfilled by our other pledge to plant 10,000 more trees. But this alone will not be enough. We do have to protect mature trees as well as their amazing benefits to the environment. And strong measures are already being put in place to protect mature trees from future developments and enhance the green skyline in Haringey. You mentioned two phrases. You said that tree losses that are completely unavoidable. Something, you know, that there should be mitigations, and absolutely no choice at all but to fell, there should be mitigations. What that misses is the fact that actually Haringey Council only ever fells a tree when it is absolutely no choice but to fell, and it only fells trees when the losses that are completely, tree loss is completely unavoidable. So on that fundamental level, we're starting at a slightly different approach. We are rewriting our planning documents so that careful consideration is given to incorporating existing trees into the design and layout of any new development and protecting them during construction. You mentioned, I think it was Islington, where we are going to match every other borough that is doing the best in arboricultural practice and beat them where we can. By basically, obviously, our limitations are the law. It will set the standard. The new planning documents will set the standard when it comes to planning and housing documents. As part of the council's new local plan, it is developing a much more robust approach to protecting existing trees. Among other measures, the plan will include a dedicated guidance document with a clear expectation for developers to retain and protect mature and veteran trees rather than fell or damage them. Residents across the borough will have the opportunity to feed into this plan when it goes to consultation, and I encourage the Haringey tree protectors to participate in that consultation. I should also mention as well that the tree and woodland plan that you reference is being revised. You referenced it as the draft plan, and thank you for putting your input into the your responses to that. They've been taken on board, and the trees and woodland plan is being redrafted right now. The council also plans to beef up its policies to maximise the number of native trees planted as part of construction projects, with all new streets tree lines. The tree, and as you well know, the tree and conservation teams have been boosted. We've trebled the tree team in the last year, and we have increased the budget as far as we can this year, which was an additional £500,000. Now, the subsidence claims, just to finish on that, well, actually, okay, on the subsidence claims, there are roughly about 200 cases of subsidence against the council at present. If we do not remove some of those trees that we are found liable for, it could cost the council, for instance, one example, £400,000 for one single tree. In the case of insurance claims, I know that my Labour colleagues in Stroud Green have led a strong campaign asking insurance companies to take some responsibility for protecting mature trees that are under threat. And speaking with our MPs, I think you had a good point about how do we change that legislation. Councils can't change the legislation, MPs do it. So we have been lobbying very hard, your ward councillors, myself and officers, to try and get the law changed and to strengthen it in line with what the demands of the Environment Bill are. Yeah, so, and in terms of St Anne's, I'd just like to say that this is about planning, and planning has strict rules. It's a quasi-judicial process. We can't make up planning as we go along, And what we can do is push developers as far as we can, which is what we did, what the planning officers did throughout that process, and got the best result out of it that could possibly have been got within the framework. And they continue to work with the developer there. So I just finished to say I agree that the council needs additional resource to address trees, which is why we have additional officers. We have been putting more budget in, but we've got to lobby government to fund this more, including the inspection of developments where veteran trees exist, ensuring work carried out by the council is completed to the highest standard. Thanks for your deputation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe, for making your representations. Please, can you and your group return to your seats, please? Thank you again. Now I'll call on Mr. David Skinner to make representations on their own change in approach to the management of the leisure centres. When you are ready, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address this forum. I'm joined by Leslie Walker, and together we help manage Haringey Aquatics, the borough's only competitive aquatics club. So Tottenham Green Leisure Centre and the Marcus Garvey Library are community hubs of preeminent importance. In a borough with one of the lowest ratios of pool space per capita in London, and only 2 leisure centres with public pools, Tottenham Green's main pool and training pool are indispensable components of Haringey's aquatic strategy. Leslie and I help run Haringey Aquatics. We have 850 young children, members, and young adults. We founded in 1950, and we provide a pathway from learning to swim through to competitive aquatic sport, up to competition up at national level. Our competitive swim squads, our divers and our water polo players train exclusively at Tottenham Green pools or Park Road pools, and very poor management and years of underinvestment in these centres has resulted in extended closure of our pools in recent months and major disruption to our training programmes. We're calling for the council to take action and instigate a radically different approach to the management of our leisure centres so that they can once again thrive as the wonderful community assets they were intended to be. I just want to take a moment to outline what we do. Our not-for-profit business as an aquatics club involves a long-term investment in athletic development by running reliable, high quality and accessible training programs that maximise opportunities for young people in the borough. To achieve any degree of success requires a long-term commitment between the club, its volunteers, paid staff, parents, and the children and young adults that comprise our membership. As part of this contract, all parties invest time, effort, expertise, and other resources to nurture young people and to help them realise their potential. Ours is a serious business, and an absolute basic requirement of doing all of this is that our swimming pools are in good working order and that pool time is consistently available. When training sessions are frequently disrupted or our pools are closed, we fail to maintain a vibrant culture in aquatic sport. Fewer children learn to swim at an early age. Fewer children can access competitive aquatics. And for those training for competition, there's a loss of fitness, potentially a failure to qualify or to reach peak condition for major competitions. And enthusiasm, hope, ambition, commitment of members, parents, coaches and volunteers, and the reputation of the club all take a hit. We are shocked by the current demise of Tottenham Green pools and appalled by the failure of Fusion Lifestyle to fully maintain, effect critical repairs and protect this resource which plays such a vital role in the lives of local residents. Similarly, we are dismayed by Fusion's failures to maintain the pools and make repairs at Park Road, leading to further disruption to our diving, swimming and water polo programmes. Haringey Aquatics' trust in our pool providers has been destroyed, and we no longer believe that our leisure centres are in safe hands. We recognise that the council is also very dissatisfied with Fusion's performance as managers, and we support your recent efforts to make our pools safe places for club members and residents alike. We're asking you, Haringey Council, to act now to make the difficult but necessary decisions to ensure the Tottenham Green is rapidly restored to full operation and that our leisure centres can once again become thriving community assets. We know higher standards of management will come at a cost and that the council's financial resources are limited, but these centres play a crucial role in the lives of local people. Our communities deserve much better. We ask that you please act now.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for all the information you gave us. Now I will take questions. I got two names of councillors who indicate they have a question. The first one is Councillor Colin Harrison.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm a ward councillor for Crouch End, and therefore Park Road Leisure Centre sits within my ward. A leisure centre which I have had complaints about as long as I have been a councillor, as you are aware. And it's no secret that I've been quite public in calling for the same things as yourselves. I did speak with the chief executive of Fusion, who at the time invited me to meet with him on site to discuss the matter. After offering him dates, I heard no more from him. I sent him all of the complaints that I have received. I've heard nothing from him. But if he does come back to me, I would like to invite you to join me in that meeting, along with my ward councillors, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Buxton, who I know similarly work hard on the matter. The issue of bringing the ownership potentially away from Fusion is a long-term one. So my question to you is, in the short term, what can the council do to assist you and other leisure centre users to help keep the leisure centre up to a standard which I think all of us would expect? Thank you.
So thanks for your question, and your comments around the CEO of Fusion resonate with me. I've had the same experience. And in terms of your direct question, I think, you know, I should acknowledge the progress that the council has made in holding Fusion to account, specifically in the last few weeks, to bring Park Road pools back into action, having had 3 weeks out for the most part due to issues around chlorine dosing. I do understand that Fusion have at least, well, just under 10 years remaining on their management contract. I would be hoping that you're looking for every opportunity to identify areas where there's been breach of contract, and with a view to terminating that contract as soon as possible. We do need, you know, even today, having had the pools open for a total of 4 days now, after that 3-week closure, we've had another closure this evening. So, you know, it's just not possible to run a competitive aquatics club when the sole pools that you're totally reliant on, with Tottenham Green closed, is just not a reliable provision of pool space. So, you know, at the very least, to continue to hold to account, to take a heavy-handed approach whenever you can, but it really is an urgent issue to really address the fundamental problem here before our leisure centres get to a point where they're totally destroyed.
Can I just say, in terms of putting somebody, or at least conducting that scrutiny, that has to be done with some expertise. You know, because I think it's very easy for Fusion to pull the wool over your eyes about what's happening. I mean, they've constantly tried to do it to us. It can't happen anymore. We understand the way they work. We understand they have no money. This is a big issue. You know, the managers can't implement action that they would like to manage because the layer above them is not authorising that action. And unless you're working at that level with them and ensuring that the necessary funds are forthcoming for absolutely business critical repairs, like, you know, what can we say? You know, the plant room at Tottenham Green, the flooding at the Tottenham Green, whatever was happening to the floods in Tottenham Green. You know, these are fairly basic issues. And if the council can't recognise them because they don't have the expertise, you need to bring that expertise in from outside. And I mean, that's an expense that would be very well worth putting in now.
Thank you. Councillor Obad?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for bringing in the deputation, Haringey Aquatics. My question was touched by Councillor Corley Harrison. So I'll leave the question out for the lead member and for Haringey Aquatics. Haringey Aquatics is an integral provision within our community, providing essential swim skills to Haringey residents, including my son. Considering the impact the closure of the leisure centres have had on Haringey Aquatics, what can the council do to support Haringey Aquatics in future? Thank you.
I believe that's a question for the leader of the council, which I'm going to call in a minute to. Sorry. Okay. Please, yeah.
Do you want to repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, so the gist of the question is, what can the council do to support Haringey Aquatics in future? Thank you.
So, I mean, it's a very similar question to the one I've just answered. You know, we cannot continue to operate a viable aquatics club with the provision of leisure centres in the way that they're currently being managed. And so we're asking you to take urgent action to bring about a radical change of approach to the management of those leisure centres. I understand that the leisure centres are subject to a 20-year contract, 10 years of which are remaining. But I'm asking you that you look for ways in which you are able to extricate Fusion from that contract and manage the shopping centres, the leisure centres more effectively under a different management regime.
There are many things that need to be done urgently now. What's happening to the Learn to Swim programme in Tottenham? What's happening to school swimming programme in Tottenham at the moment? I mean, this is dire. This is the feed for the club, but more to the point, this is our young children learning to swim. You know, so something needs to be done about that urgently.
Thank you. It seems that we have two more questions. Councillor Rice and Councillor. You're so far away, I can't see who they are. Okay, Councillor at the back there. Johnson, ask your question, please.
So from Crouch End, will you be willing to meet with us urgently as soon as possible to discuss this? I think there's a very broad political consensus that we want to meet, even if Fusion doesn't agree to the meeting, and get this sorted out as soon as possible.
We're very happy to participate in any way that's valuable, yeah.
Councillor Rice, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. The presenter talked in such a way that leads me to understand what he's actually talking about is taking the service back in-house. I go regularly to Tottenham Green. I spend several hours a week at Tottenham Green. I know it, but the difficulty with the possessions being made, although it sounds sensible, is a question of money. Fusion owes this council £15 million. There's a historic debt involved with the changeover from Haringey to Fusion. You can check with the lead member the details, but it is that sort of figure. In addition to that, the current repairs to the electronics and things like that at the centre is going to cost another just shy of £400,000. So I'm broadly sympathetic with what you say about taking the service back in-house. That's a train of your contribution. But where are you going to get the money from?
Fusion falls over and becomes bankrupt. I don't know what's going to happen to that 50 million quid.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, this is quite likely. I wouldn't wait for it.
So the other thing I would just like to add to that is the alternative is that Fusion continue to manage these leisure centres in the way that they have done, and the value of the leisure centres at the end of the contract is virtually worthless.
I mean, we're sitting next to a completely, apparently deceased Tottenham Green. I mean, I can't tell you how upsetting that is for those of us who've used that centre. I have a daughter who learned to swim there, who then came up through the club, became girl captain, enjoyed all of those advantages, trained as a lifeguard, trained as a swimming teacher, worked there, went into management in Fusion at Tottenham Green, which is devastated.
We come to 30 minutes, but I have another 3 councillors who want to ask questions. Can I ask you to be very brief, please? Councillor Simon Safo first.
My question is very brief, actually, is a question to the council leader. Oh, sorry, do I have to ask? Okay. Well, it isn't really. My question is this. Sometimes when people come into contracts, they get very eager and they cut the cost of what the cost really is to provide a decent service. So my question is, do we believe that Fusion had overpromised and underdelivered? And yeah, I've got serious concerns about that because it's stripping away a service provision for a marginalised community. And I used it for swimming and my family used it, and we no longer have a service. And, you know, state the obvious, Black people don't really have that facility. And I would really like to see it back up and running to serve my community.
Thank you. I'm not sure the deputation can answer your question. Well, so I'm going to take the other 2 questions one after the other. Councillor Wallace and Councillor Ali, if you can be brief, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, have you been offered an alternative, or are you wishing to be brought in on a consultative process by Haringey Council? And if you, or would you like to be have the council consider an option maybe whereby they collaborated with another neighbouring borough in order to kind of help you in this little interim carry on with what you're trying, your needs for the people that you serve?
Yeah, so thank you for that suggestion. I mean, independently, given the crisis that we've been confronting for the last few weeks, we have reached out to other swim squads in other boroughs for pool time. Some have volunteered that support. I think the reality is that probably not unrelated to the previous set of conversations, you know, travel time is an important criteria to some of these to some of the leisure centres outside of the borough, and you know, an important aspect of what we do is the local nature of it. You know, people from the local community can go to swimming lessons or training programs straightforwardly, yeah, and you're much more likely to lose large numbers of swimmers, water polo players and divers the further away you're offering that training provision.
I think if
Thank
Park
you.
Road, if Park Road
Oh.
went out now, we would really need to be doing that, because all of our swimmers who've trained, really trained and are going for the county, regional and national times, they would really need that. David's point about swimmers needing to swim locally is affecting us right now at Tottenham. We've got kids leaving already because their parents will have signed up for them to walk themselves to Tottenham Green, but they're not going to have them walking up to Duke's, where we've booked the few hours remaining up there that are available.
Thank you. We're running out of time. I will take quickly Councillor Ali, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Just to say thank you for your time, and I know how amazing Harringay Aquatics is from personal experience, for my son as well. Not a plug there, I promise. But also congratulations on the sort of competition you've won last month, the county championships. So my question is actually about the competitive side of things. I think one of the challenges that we face is that most public pools have the facilities to actually do competitive swimming, and a lot of the private pools are using right now, like Duke's, maybe Highgate, I believe, don't have those facilities. So what's your hope for the future? Essentially, my question is, what's the ambition? Because I think the current situation for you to hire private pools isn't conducive for an existing swimming club.
Yeah, so I mean, we do hire space at the Duke Aldrich Academy and at the Mallington Sports Centre Highgate Schools pool. We run learn to swim programs out of those swimming pools. And in terms of the ambition, really, it's to have a stable provision of pool space in more central locations within the borough, i.e. Park Road and Tottenham Green, where we can service a large number of local residents. But the key thing is that we can depend on the availability of that pool space day in, day out, not a day here and there, which is what we seem to be experiencing at the moment.
The problem is that Harringay is starting from such a low base. As you know, a few years ago, before maybe 4 years, 5 years ago, we ran a third pool campaign. This was to get the pool in the central corridor, the Wood Green corridor. I mean, Harringay just has very, very few pools. If we had a pool now I know it wouldn't have happened already, but if we had a pool in the Wood Green corridor, it wouldn't be such a crisis.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are running out of time. In fact, we overrun our time. I will ask the leader to respond to I'd like to thank you, first of all, for coming tonight, the deputation, and we are very grateful to hear from you, and leader of the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Leslie and David. So first of all, I'd really like to thank Harringay Aquatics, as Haringay's only competitive aquatics club, for all the incredible work you do for our children and young people, and also for your heartfelt contributions tonight. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet with you, David, alongside Eva and Nathan last week, although the circumstances are very difficult. And you did share with me then all your frustrations with Fusion and the way that they manage our pools currently. I agree that it's absolutely unacceptable that 850 members of your club have had their ability to train disrupted significantly because of the closure of Tottenham Green and the temporary closures at Park Road. And I can only apologise. You were right, pool users in Harringay absolutely deserve better, and I think we all absolutely agree with that. As you know, as of Wednesday, the 8th of February, all pools at Park Road Pools and Fitness have reopened following the completion of maintenance work to the chemical dosing system by Fusion. We have put in a strict monitoring regime, and I promise that we will keep the process going and be robust. We have a new director responsible for leisure services and an opportunity to introduce Barry Francis, who is our new director for environment and neighbourhoods. And I've told him that residents and swimmers needs must be our priority, and we need to be tough on the service which Fusion delivers for us. Unfortunately, Tottenham Green Pools and Fitness and Marcus Garvey Library and Customer Service Centre remain closed, while Fusion continue to work to rectify a major issue with electricity supply to the building, which was caused by the flooding in the basement. And whilst we are hopeful that the library and customer service space will be open in the next few weeks, as I told you, David, when you came to meet me. Because of the flooding, it looks like there needs to be major work to the pool, and it won't be available, unfortunately, to use until earliest summer. We have been very disappointed with Fusion's response to this situation, and we will be reviewing arrangements in our leisure provision to ensure that residents get the best possible service and that closures like this are not repeated in the future. And we will absolutely continue to work with yourselves, with the Park Road Lider users group and friends of Marcus Garvey and other groups that I've already met over the course of the last few weeks to make sure that our monitoring regime and that actually input from yourselves as users are at the centre of that regime. So thank you very much for coming along tonight, and as you know, it would be really good to meet with you again at some point in the future. So thank you, and apologies again.
Thank you all.
I'd like to thank all the petitioners, deputations, and all the residents who attended here this evening. If you wish to remain for the rest of the meeting, you're very welcome. Now we move on to item 12, which is having a debate, cost of living crisis, how the council can support residents. Because of time, can I ask all the speakers have quite a list here to speak no more than a couple of minutes each, please. But first, I would like to invite Councillor Colin Harrison to introduce the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just so you're aware as well, I just got an email 10 minutes ago to say Park Road pool, main pool will be closed tomorrow as well. So a little update on that. On to the debate. So firstly, I just wanted to mention Ishraq Bhatti from the Food Bank Aid, who was set to be our external speaker on this debate. Unfortunately, due to the issues at the previous full council, despite attending the meeting, he was unable to obtain entry and was not able to attend this rearranged date. So may I just put on record my thanks for agreeing to be the speaker and coming to the previous meeting. Last time we held a full council meeting back in July, we passed a motion calling for the government to act on the cost of living crisis. Since then, I think we can all agree things have only gotten worse. Somewhat unbelievably, the country is on its third Prime Minister since that meeting. The thankfully brief leadership of Liz Truss massively exacerbated the circumstances we found ourselves in, and the current government has failed to get to grips with the scale of the challenge. Rather than think seriously about what they should be doing, the Conservatives have once again shunted the difficult decisions onto local authorities. Now the administration is left in the unenviable position of having to decide to raise council tax to fund strapped services when many residents are already struggling with bills and inflation. Of course, one thing the council could do is to introduce a voluntary council tax fund for anyone who wants to pay more. Maybe this won't raise very much, but there seems to be little harm in trying. The now Cabinet Member for Finance at this year's budget meeting called a council tax top-up somewhat bizarrely at the time, taking us back to the Victorian age, but the council has already, through its scheme where residents are now paying for the council's trees to be planted, conceded on this basic principle. So whatever the objection to the idea, I hope that given the necessity, a top-up scheme which raised over £1 million in 2 years in Westminster will be considered in the budget. The motion we passed in July implored the government to do more. It is clear that we and many others asking for the same thing have been ignored. Of course, both Liberal Democrats and Labour parties will keep pressuring central government to act, but we must be realistic. We therefore, as a council, need to think about what more we can do with our scarce resources to help our residents who have already faced great difficulty getting through the winter, and work together as one to support all those that need help from their council and their elected representatives. No doubt many of us will have ideas of how to help, and if we're honest, the council will not have the sufficient funds to action many of them. However, I hope that this debate, rather than descending into political knockabout, can give the administration some ideas, however small, to take away and implement after this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I call Councillor Brabazon. Should you put it on here?
Yes, yeah.
Is it on? Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's very hard to disagree when we all agree. We all agree about the government. We all agree about the, or non-government, as you might say. But in Haringey, we can do the best we can with the resources we have. So I'll just take my couple of minutes to list some of the things we've done. I think we're all aware that we have put in money to top up free school meals for children whose families don't meet the eligibility criteria. With Councillor Chamwani and I, we have made sure that the Household Support Fund puts in £1 million to support children free school meals during the school holidays, and that includes children who are just outside the eligibility criteria. We use the Holiday Activity Fund in order to supplement that and to provide free activities in our schools happening this holiday and every holiday, so that young people and children have a safe place to go and a place where they can get a meal. Our schools are providing uniform banks, food banks, toiletry banks and all sorts of other banks. It is amazing that in 2023, we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century in the 6th richest country in the world. We are talking about these types of things having to happen to support people. But as I said, we're not running the country. We are in Haringey and we're doing the best we can to mitigate the situation in which we find ourselves. Just a couple of other things we're doing in children's services. We have £3.8 million awarded to us by the government for family hubs. This is I might say, a very welcome amount of money, although it is minimal in comparison to what Labour did when we invested in Sure Start. Nevertheless, we will use that money in our family hub, starting at the Triangle in the new financial year, in order to support families in crisis and indeed all sorts of families with children up to age 19 in a sort of hub and spoke model. We have a wonderful programme in our schools called Social Workers in Schools. This is a terrific project in our secondaries, which is supporting some of the most vulnerable young people that are in our schools. And I've had the opportunity to meet them directly and to hear how much this programme has provided support for them in perhaps one of the most difficult times, their mental health, their well-being and their physical health.
Sorry,
I probably have run out of time, which is just as well because I lost my train of thought. So, as I said, it is hard to disagree when we all agree, and we all know that what's happening in this country is shocking and to be deeply regretted. And I can only hope that things will improve, and certainly will when we have a Labour government. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please remind everyone, because of the time, keep to 2 minutes. I hate to interrupt and cut people off, but I may have to become tougher and do that. Councillor Emery.
I think you've been very tough tonight, Mayor, actually, so far, I would say. I'll try and keep to that 2 minutes. Anyway, this cost of living crisis we face as a country is predominantly caused by events overseas. However, this has undoubtedly been made worse by successive poor decisions made by the Conservative government. There are many things the Liberal Democrats have proposed to improve the situation, including lowering VAT, a tax shown to predominantly hurt poorer households, but these have been rejected. We know that this Tory government will not change. Until the next general election, we are stuck with people who are looking out for the wrong people in society. £18 billion worth of tax giveaways to big banks over the next 5 years, while some in our country are too afraid to turn the heating on. We, quite rightly, should criticise and push the government to do more. The Liberal Democrats and Labour can both claim success with the windfall tax campaign, even if we can see that the Tory version is poorly made, with Shell avoiding paying tax despite making £9 billion in profit. But as a council, we must look for opportunities where we can make a difference. On this, Liberal Democrat councils have shown the way. In Richmond, we've been funding urgent support packages to help those hardest hit. In York, we are giving out vouchers to 4,000 residents on the lowest incomes. In Portsmouth, we've got a £1.9 million fund for those worth off, including help for struggling families and pensioners. That's when I look towards what Haringey is doing. And I note what Councillor Brammerson is saying, but I've seen a lot of signposting, a lot of previous pots of money being used again. The leaflet that went out to households in Haringey was very useful. However, it did show that the council seemed to be devoid of ideas and any new initiatives to help residents in this time. It is disappointing that the council has not taken any new steps, and I urge them to consider implementing similar proposals to the one Liberal Democrat councils have taken up and down the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunstall.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. As the cost of living crisis continues to spiral around the country, we know that many Haringey residents will continue to be disproportionately affected. I'm so pleased to see the ongoing work delivered by this Labour Council in promoting services and taking direct action to support our residents. From the resident-facing work, such as the recently delivered Cost of Living Handbook, the Haringey Support Fund and our Warm Welcome initiative, providing publicly accessible spaces for residents facing energy crisis, through to back office initiatives such as the Low Income Family Tracker system, enabling council teams to compare data across council services and target and support those households we know are facing difficulties. Of course, fundamentally, it is the central government that holds the key to lifting households out of destitution, crisis and poverty. But there is much that local government can do, and I'm pleased to see that this Labour Council's proactive approach to this issue is having an impact at this time. At times of crisis, it can be tempting to look inward, and it can be tempting to become inward looking. We forget to look up and around and see what others are doing. The voluntary community and faith sector has been dealing with these issues long before this particular crisis swept so many more households into poverty and hardship. The VCS often holds a trusted place within the lives of those who are facing hardship, and it is vital that we ensure that we are facilitating coordination between these services. Whether advice, advocacy, debt, food or immigration related, these services need to be resourced enough to be able to look up, engage with and understand each other. Initiatives such as the Haringey Advice Partnership, led by Citizens Advice, are great examples of this, but more can be done. The Council is uniquely placed to bring together and support the development of these networks, and I know Councillors Chamwani and Davies are keen to do so. But I would encourage colleagues to look up and explore examples of good practice which can be found from Tower Hamlets to Norfolk. The Children's Society has led some excellent work in this space through their coordinated community support programme. Coordination does not just happen because we think it is a good idea. It requires resource, but it can reduce duplication and costs further down the line. And critically, it means that those facing financial crisis and seeking access to support do not get bounced between services, facilitating better and more timely referrals across agencies and getting the right help to people at the right time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And indeed, it is nice for once to not have to disagree. And this debate is very welcome, and it's a really good opportunity to put forward ideas for how the council can help our residents. And the Haringey Warm Welcome initiative, as just referenced by Councillor Dunstall, is indeed a fantastic initiative. And it's a major failure of this government that schemes such as these warm banks are even needed. But the council should be recognised for moving swiftly to set them up, and they are sadly a lifeline for many of our residents. So we wondered if it would be possible for the council to do a bit more with some of these warm welcome spaces. So, for example, we talked about toy banks for children. Children's toys are not cheap, and maybe your child has completed a jigsaw, if anyone does those anymore, or their computer games so many times that some other child will get benefit from that, and in return they can get a new toy and trade those toys, because toys are not cheap and they will give much happiness to many children who at the moment are wanting as those luxuries, as they may be called, have disappeared, and people are really thinking about whether they're going to pay their energy bill or feed their children instead of buy them a toy. On concessions for leisure centres, the Choice Advantage and Choice Advantage Plus are already quite generous in their eligibility criteria to those on low incomes, but the monthly fee is likely to be unaffordable for many. So is there any scope for those concessionary rates to be lowered, even if it's a temporary measure to get people through the next few months? I know that I personally am not looking forward to my energy price hikes in April, and I'm certainly not among the most vulnerable on the lowest pay in this borough or any. I'd also like to suggest better signposting from the council for those who are able to make donations, whether those donations be that set of Lego or Duplo that your child has grown out of, or something more major. It would be good if we could find a way to get those mentions out, the volunteering and donating items, as we have for food banks. And perhaps there could be scope to highlight the possibility of setting up a direct debit or one-off contributions for organisations like Centrepoint and Crisis who are operating in Haringey. Finally, I'd like to urge the council to move forward more quickly with setting up a library of things. It's something that was in both the Lib Dem and the Labour manifestos last year now. And creating these libraries where residents will be able to borrow household items rather than being forced to buy them would be a brilliant idea. I have a drill. I think I've used it once. I'd happily put it in a library for others to use. And this is good for the environment as well.
Over the 2 minutes.
I'm very sorry. In that case, I only had to say that I hope that we could consider some of these ideas and take them forward to help our residents, and they should not cost much.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. Alongside the climate emergency, the cost of living crisis is one of the most critical challenges we face. I represent Stroud Green. People often think of it as an affluent ward, and we do have wealthy areas, but many people in Stroud Green are struggling, living in poverty, particularly vulnerable to the rising cost of living. According to the latest census data, nearly half of all households in Stroud Green are deprived in at least one dimension. And speaking to residents living in places like Shettle Court, Carlton Lodge and Weston Park, or in the HMOs by Stroud Green Road and Upper Tollington Park, I've felt how people are struggling. As we all know, it's people not being able to afford the heating, not being able to afford food and essentials, becoming physically and mentally ill as a result. Unexpected one-off costs becoming completely unmanageable. Many residents, particularly our private renters, living in poorly insulated properties which just scrape the minimum legal standard, forcing them to pay eye-watering bills or sit in the cold. The cost of living crisis has inflamed London's housing issues. Lots of Stroud Green renters saw their rent hiked at their most recent contract renewal or when they were forced to find a new place. And beyond people's basic needs, the economic crisis is impacting all the things that make life worth living, like all the fantastic small businesses that we're home to in Stroud Green. Soaring energy bills are really hitting them as well. And then there's the impact on the voluntary sector, which is getting hit as well with a drop-off in donations on top of inflation. I pay tribute to our local charities like the Holy Trinity Food Bank and Mind in Haringey, providing vital support to vulnerable residents, even in such challenging conditions. So much of this requires better intervention from central government, but I welcome what Haringey Council is doing in its powers to help, such as the cost of living support guide that's been distributed to every household in Haringey, schemes like the Haringey Support Fund and our Haringey Warm Welcome initiative offering safe, warm places to connect with neighbours. The Goods Office and Mind in Haringey are already acting as warm welcome spaces in our area, and I hope more will follow. But as a cash-strapped council facing severe funding pressures, the stark reality is that the support we can offer will only go so far. People are suffering and it will likely get worse. And so anything we can additionally try to support more local people should be explored. And I look forward to working with colleagues to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Da Costa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We see the consequence with the increased food bank use. As Councillor Corley Harrison mentioned, when this meeting was originally scheduled, we were due to hear from Ishraq Bhatti from Food Bank Aid. Their figures paint a dreadful picture of many people's reality. In the 6-month period leading up to November, Food Bank Aid saw a 30% increase in the number of items distributed. But at the same time, 30% increase in the number of people using the service and a 25% increase in items distributed. But at the same time, their donations fell by 35%. And as also mentioned by Councillor Worrell, not only is this crisis hitting those who are less well off in society, it's also affecting millions of middle class people across our country who are no longer able to help out. With this crisis of hunger in mind, this council's commitment to expanding free school meals is welcome. Free school meals for all infants was an achievement. An expansion of free meals over the holidays is one of the few things this government has done, although they were dragged into it. And now they're passing costs onto councils. As Councillor Braverton has mentioned, Haringey has expanded its free school meal support, and I'm delighted that this year's budget continues to do that. Unfortunately, none of the extra categories of people who are eligible for free school meals locally are mentioned on the website, and we'd recommend that this be corrected so that people now included in the scheme are aware. I'm delighted the Cabinet member has confirmed the scheme to provide food vouchers during school holidays is being continued. It's a shame the government has passed the buck on funding this, but again, can we please make sure the council website is updated so that parents and carers are aware? Finally, the website does make it clear the school uniform grant is available to those eligible for free school meal, but it doesn't make it clear if this includes the extra children Haringey funds or those only meeting the national criteria. If it's the latter, could we please consider whether we have the funds available to expand the uniform grant to children Haringey has already identified as needing support with meals. I hope that Cabinet members will ensure that the website is updated and become much clearer to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Chair. So, like Councillor Da Costa, I'd prepared to speak on this matter at the previous council meeting, and one of the reasons that I wanted to speak was because, you know, I felt that one of the starkest signs of our times was, I'm a tweeter, I tweet, I use social media, and I was in a Iceland supermarket one day and was stunned to see the price of a small tub of butter was £5. Took a photograph, tweeted it, opened my my Twitter account about an hour later, and it'd gone viral. And I ended up unfortunately quoted in the Daily Express, the Mail, the Bristol Post, and the Northern Echo. You know, it was, and it was actually, you know, we are laughing, but the reality was stark. Actually, £5 for an essential food item, and it shocked many people. I then got loads of responses from people that had photographed tubs of butter with security tags on them in supermarkets. That's a strong message to us. For me, my fundamental beliefs are that it isn't primarily, or we know that one of the causes of this crisis is what's happening overseas, but also at the same time it is a broken energy market. We know that market is broken when BP and Shell are making record profits, yet our bills are going up. The reality for people on a day-to-day basis is that actually their bills are going up, but BP and Shell are making record payouts to their shareholders. But the question is, what do we do? What can we do as a council? We have to be ready to look at the monsters at the bottom of the garden for the future. And that's always talking about the impact on families, but recognising the impact on young people as well. One of the biggest rises at the moment, a few years ago, we were all campaigning on legal loan sharks, but everybody is not spotting what's going on out there for young people. There has been a 70% increase in the use of buy now, pay later, and that is amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. But the research shows that a lot of people are using that to meet day-to-day costs of living, and they're not actually working out how much money is coming out of their accounts at different points in the month, and that is primarily affecting young people. And I know this will affect young people in our borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Mahab, please. Am I pronouncing the wrong way?
Yes, sorry, Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Mahbub.
Mahbub. I do apologise.
No, it's totally fine. It's a privilege to be a councillor here in Haringey, particularly because I've lived here my whole life, particularly because this community made me the man I am, and because I feel like I understand the people of Haringey. The people of Haringey work hard and try to make the most of their opportunities. But sometimes we all need a helping hand, just like my parents did 30 years ago. And the Haringey Council is striving to do so much for their residents. And a shameless plug, if you go online, you can look at our cost of living booklet. However, the root of this problem is with our Tory government, a government that only helps big business, their Etonian chums, and their non-dom connections. When we have to bail out a business, they tell us to have a heart. But when we ask for funding for basics for our residents, they tell us to pull our socks up. When BP made record profits, we're told to put another jumper on. When 22 water bosses paid themselves 24.8 million with bills set to increase by 11.6%, we're told to have less showers. When the price of low-fat milk increased by 46% between 2021 to 2022 due to the food price inflation, I mean, when did milk become such a luxury? When the Prime Minister thinks travelling in an RAF jet is a good way to get around, he definitely doesn't understand what we're going through. Bubble up economics doesn't work, and we've been left with an economy that can't hold its head up. Drastic action must come from the government to help the people of Haringey. So the best way that we as a council can support our residents is to continue scrutinising the government's ill decisions. And I welcome Councillor Emery's telling us about the ill actions of the Tory governments, particularly the one that started it in David Cameron. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I call on the cabinet member responsible for this area, Councillor Seema Chand. I do apologize for my bad pronunciations with names. It's really bad, and I do apologize for that. Seema.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Lib Dems for bringing this debate to full council, and I'd like to thank all of the councillors for their contribution, probably bar Councillor Emery, but I'll let him go. We have many differences, but on this issue, we're on similar pages. Unlike council chambers across the country where Tory councillors are coming out with ridiculous and often very offensive remarks, I'm comforted that we don't have that in Haringey. I wish that I could stand here tonight and say to you that the cocktail of hardship facing our residents won't get worse, and I've got a master plan and it's all going to be great. It won't. It will get worse for a lot of people. I've never hidden the poverty that I was raised in. There's a twisted irony that I had to sit through a deputation about Fusion Leisure Centre next door. That's where I showered as a kid because we couldn't afford hot water. It terrifies me what our communities are facing. I can use this as an opportunity to showcase our work with the Haringey Support Fund and the Haringey Here to Help programme, but this financial crisis will not be solved by local initiatives alone. I have every faith in these programmes and I'm really proud of what we've achieved here, but it is not set up for the scale of the crisis that we are facing. There is a multi-billion pound cost of living crisis in this country. It is a mix of rising costs of food, stagnant pay, hikes in rent and eye water and energy bills. There are record numbers of people joining trade unions and we must support that struggle, as if our residents do not get inflationary pay rises, then they would also be hard hit. Social security increases that are coming in April are welcome, especially increasing the benefit cap. However, we must acknowledge that this is not rectifying the 4-year benefit freeze in 2015, so many are still behind in real terms, and this is at best bringing welfare in line to 2019 rates. The basic rate of benefit is at the lowest real terms for 40 years. We must also acknowledge that the residents will be seeing this swallowed up in the increases of rent and energy, meaning many will still be in the destitute position they are today. An emerging group that we are seeing now who is facing a huge bite are those above the social security threshold. Wages are falling by a staggering 7%. Mortgages are increasing by 5% and a stunning 400,000 people, additional households, are entering the poverty threshold. As councillors, we are acutely aware of the huge caseload of residents that we're seeing who don't have the luxury of choosing between eating and eating. They just can't afford to do either. Food banks are reporting people giving food back because it requires cooking. I'll leave my comments here to let you know that the latest government fund that has come to support people in this borough of £730,000 is council tax support. It works out to be £25 per household or 50p per week. You can't even buy 2 Freddos with 50p a week. This is Tory Britain, run by millionaires for millionaires. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I call on Councillor Colin Harrison to make closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your contributions, and Councillor Chamwani for responding to the debate. I think everyone here as a councillor probably finds casework related to this topic area some of the most difficult to deal with, so I'm sure it really resonates with everyone here. Councillor Ibrahim commented on the energy market and the broken energy market, and Councillor Mahbub on the broken water market, but look, broken rail market, broken housing market, broken private rental market, you know, everything. is broken at the moment through lack of investment, lack of care. Let's not forget the impact that this can have at a local level once it escalates. 15% council tax rise in Croydon, 10% council tax rise in Thurrock. A difficult rise here in Haringey, but at least we're not at that level through mismanagement. It's shocking that in 2023, 2022, 2023, local authorities are having to provide food banks, school uniform, health and wellbeing banks. But is it surprising if I quote you, the new deputy chair of the Tory party, Lee Anderson, who said, "I think you'll see firsthand there's not this massive use for food banks in this country." Well, Lee, come to Haringey. Come to Haringey and see how true that is. And if there isn't a great need for food banks, fund them. The government can fund them. And if there's no need, it'll have no financial impact. They can fund our warm banks too. And they can fix all the other things that they've broken. I'd like to just say one more thing that I hope that both parties can get behind at a national level. And that is proper funding for childcare, because our childcare system is broken in this country. And parents are better off often staying at home and looking after their children than getting back to work. Staying at home part-time instead of going to work full-time. Closing their businesses down instead of keeping them open. And that is a broken society. So I hope the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrat Party at national level put proper funded childcare at the heart of their manifestos. And thank you again for everyone that's contributed tonight.
Thank you very much to all of you and for this debate. I would like to thank everyone for their participation. And I also like to say well done to, again, we have two councillors that gave the maiden speech. Is Councillor Worrell and Councillor Dancer. By the way, thank you. And I have to say I'm grateful for this information and assistance of my right-hand man over there. He's the one who tells me who is giving the maiden speech. I'm not very good at remembering. Okay, I will use the chair's discretion at 8.1i, the little I, to end the meeting here and not start item 13 and 14. Responses to the oral questions can be provided in 3 clear working days after this meeting. Motions will fall and can be submitted to the next meeting if that's what you wish. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending. I know we've been here a long time this evening, so I'm very grateful for your patience. Thank you. And I close the meeting. Good night.